Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the More Money Show comes in. If you're ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
Hello and welcome to this episode. I am your host, Cassie Parks, and I have back with me Adam and Vanessa Lambert of Be the Wellness, BEE, thewellness.com. So welcome back, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us, Cassie.
Yeah, thanks. Cool to be back.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this interview because, of course, we were laughing and talking before about all the awesome stuff that's going on. And but we're going to start here. Adam, what is awesome?
Oh, let me count the things that are awesome. Well, it's funny. We were just talking about how this is always a hard question for me, but in reality, I think it's because it's getting like so many things are awesome that it's getting harder to tell like what's the most awesome. You know what I mean? And it sounds, and it's not just, oh, our life is, all rainbows and, unicorns or whatever but I think what the big thing for me is that there's just a shift in my mindset around just that, like how I look at what's going on for the day. So, this morning we were late for yoga, so we didn't get to go, but we came home and I got some work done. So that's awesome. You could look at it like there was, some epic failure in our morning that threw everything off. But in reality, I got a good workout in and I got, some stuff done. So I think to sum it up, I think what's really awesome is just the shift in the way that I'm looking at things.
Oh, that's so awesome. Because that's everything, right? That is a very good one. I know.
Yeah. And it's like broad spectrum. And I think that's the part that is kind of surprising to the way that my brain works. Like you look at one thing, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be working on my money story and sorting out these things. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, this is pretty much everything in my life. We can be late to something and miss it and skip something and see that and see what's awesome in that versus getting bummed out.
Ooh, I love it. Yeah, right. I know. Usually it's like, oh, and then you have to follow up with Vanessa. But now, Vanessa, you have to follow that. What's awesome in your world today?
I know, that is a tough one. I think actually something, and I totally agree with what Adam's saying. I just want to, almost not reiterate, but just say that I totally feel that as well, what he's talking about. And I totally feel it for our life in general, which is, I think what is so cool about all of this work and everything that we've been doing is that it all just feels so awesome. But in particular, there's a couple of things that feel really awesome to me. One is we bought my youngest nephew, a ticket to go to NASA space camp for his birthday.
Yay!
And it just, what's awesome about that is so many things. And that is that like financially we can pull it together and do that. We have our family that will pitch in too and make it work. And it just really kind of, to me, signifies a place that we've come to in our life, which is like, we can really do things for people. We can really like make a difference in the people that we love's lives. And so, which is like really at the end of the day, money is great for the things it can buy you. But it's even more awesome for what it can do for the people you love. And so I think for me, this week has been really fun, just feeling like, yeah, we can make that happen for him, which gives him an opportunity to explore a piece of his brain and heart and soul and what he might potentially want to create in his life. And I just feel so much gratitude about being a conduit for that and having access to something that can make a difference for him.
That is so awesome.
Yes.
I love both answers, obviously.
Double down with the philanthropy.
Yeah, right?
Philanthropy card.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because it's something that, we talk about this obviously in your program with the future self thing and being crystal clear on what that future self does. And it's something that's like, it's a work in progress for me of really figuring a lot of that stuff out. But there's something that has stuck with me for a long time. I heard it in a podcast and that was Jamie Foxx. I'm pretty sure it was on Tim Ferriss's podcast maybe. And Jamie Foxx was talking about his relationship with Robert Downey Jr. And apparently they're really close friends. And he was talking about this number of years that they went through where they just bought each other ridiculous Christmas or birthday gifts. And so they get invited to each other's birthday parties or whatever. And it was just year on year of like, oh my God, what's he going to get me? And Jamie Foxx was telling the story about buying him a pony, you know, and like showing up at Robert Downey Jr.'s house with a pony. And something about that and like the ability to just do stuff like that for your friends and be able to buy and I get buy, for lack of a better term, you know, things that just are fun, you know, like you don't think about, you're not worried about the financial piece of it. You're not worried about it. You're like, you know, and I think that that's like an aspect guy, you know, that does that.
Yeah.
Shows up with a pony.
Right? That's who you want to be, right? And I love, I love all of that because I think part of it cut out. Will you say it again about being that guy?
Oh man.
I know, right? If we can't echo it, it's like.
Oop. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
I think the internet is just giving us a little bit of a fit.
Yeah, we just shut off our video, so hopefully it gets a little better. Cool. The recording light stopped flashing, but now it's back. So the thing,
go ahead. We're just talking about giving ponies and like showing up with awesomeness in people's lives.
Yeah, and the thing that's like really attractive about that to me is like that seems like a fun way to be in the world. Like to be that guy that when he shows up, you just don't know what he's going to bring, you know, or to be able to just do that. It just lights me up inside to be able to do things like that for people, you know, and it's part of one of the things in my future self and the project that we picked kind of early on was this trip taking my nephew to Europe, you know, or in this kind of round the world trip that eventually shrunk back to just going to Europe. But the ability, like the thought that I'm the guy that could do that for someone is like fires me up. You know, it's something that I get a lot of enjoyment out of and it makes me excited, you know, and yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think that when Vanessa was talking, I definitely remembered that moment. I'm like, oh, because your families are so important. But I thought back to that, like that very first assignment. And it was like, okay, what really lights you up? Right. Because I think in the beginning, I don't know, it was like, I don't even remember what your $10,000 list, but there was no energy. There was no fire until we hit that round the world trip with your nephew.
Yeah. It was mostly, and it's all still things that original list is all still things that I want, like, you know, but as far as the point of the program of getting that feeling, getting to know that feeling of being excited, like truly excited about something like that. You're right. It didn't shift until we got, and it was like, oh no, like this is the feeling that we're looking for, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. So fun. So you guys recently did the Future Self Workshop. So whoever wants to share first, what did you say was the biggest thing that came out of that? Aha, whether it was an aha, clarity, just seeing something?
I think the big thing for me was the scripting as if things had already happened and just the shift in your mind around the way that you think about things when it's in the past. It creates this pathway where it's for sure because it's in the past. It already happened, right? So the scripting that we did in that process of just shifting the way that you think about things almost gets rid of that little question in your mind of whether something could be real or not, or whether or not that's something you could create by actually writing it as if it's already happened. And I think that was a huge shift for me. And I've continued to not only script and write things in that way, but actually just think in that way. And I think that really has made a huge difference, because if you sort of compare and contrast thinking about it as if it's already happened to even like positive thinking or law of attraction or any of these other kind of things that you think about in order to attract what you want, there's still a difference. There's still a vibrational undertone of whether or not it's real. And when you think about it as already happening, or having already happened, it just becomes like, no, it's 100%. This is real. It already happened. And I really took that one away and ran with it and was like, oh yeah, that's just one more little sort of leg up you can get on the way that your mind works and the way that you can really create things from a place of knowing that it's actually 100% true.
Yes, I love that explanation. Because it's true. It's that you literally think about it different. If it's already happened, then you're sort of like, I really want it, I'm believing it, but there's still maybe this isn't going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, we tend to give ourselves like a little escape route sometimes. And I think we do it to keep ourselves safe so that if it doesn't happen, we're not disappointed. I think we try to protect ourselves. And so we kind of keep it like, oh yeah, I really, really hope this happens. But if it doesn't, you know, that's okay too, because you don't want to get your hopes up. You don't want to be disappointed and all, you know, all of those things. But I think that somewhere in the blend of that, you sort of create energy around it where you just don't really believe it, or you know, it's not really, really real. So I think just shifting the context of it being in the past just really helps you solidify that it is real and it has happened. And it's just, yeah, it's a really cool, super small tweak, but the implications are really far reaching.
Love it. How about you, Adam?
Well, a similar situation with the scripting, but for me, one of the things that is difficult, or that I've realized is difficult for me to do, is to map out these future self ideas and lay these things out in a way that kind of keeps the spark and sort of the energy of it while I'm going through it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm writing it in future tense, there's this massive tendency for me to start second guessing and poo-pooing any of the reasons why I wouldn't be able to actually do that. Where in writing about it past tense, writing it like a story, the story of, you know, of me, I don't do that. It's like, it just, for whatever reason, it just lets me write as however ridiculously off the wall I want to, as a story about something that happened, as opposed to something that I'm going to do. And that has been really helpful in just even the way that I think about, you know, individual projects that we might be working on. I can start at the top and work backwards of, you know, how did this go down? Not how is it going to go down? And that's been helpful in all sorts of ways, you know, I mean, in all sorts of, I guess, applications, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that is that's the power of it, because you're absolutely right. When it's like, oh, this is going to happen, writing it in the future, your brain, it just throws up all these things about, well, I don't know, like, how are we going to make that happen? Is that even possible? All these things. But yeah, when it's in the past, you can start to say, how did it happen, and see the path super quickly. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah,
it.
like gives you freedom to make up paths that you didn't even know existed, you know? You
Yeah.
can just kind of leave it open. Like, I don't even know how it happened, but it did. You know?
Right? Yeah.
If you're writing that as your plan, that's not a plan. You know, you're like, we're going to go here. I have no idea how it's going to happen, but we're going to get there. Like, that's not a plan. That's, you know, it's an objective, right? But when you do it the other way around, it seems to work out.
Yeah. And so for you, because you were a person, I feel like, who needed the step-by-step plan.
Uh-huh.
So talk about what a like you talked a little bit, but like that's got to be a huge shift and open up so much when it's like, I got there and I don't know how I got there, but it happened and I can believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm still wrapping my head around this as like how I feel about it. It's so counter. I mean, like you mentioned, it's so counter to the way that I've accomplished things in the past. You know, I mean, my last career, it's, you know exactly what needs to be done, and you know exactly how it's going to be done, planned step by step. It's everything's laid out. It's like what I did for a living, you know. And so to get to this place where outcomes are, or I should say the problems and objectives are a lot more all over the map, you know, and kind of a lot of different ways of getting there, and you have the freedom to sort of, you know, move through any of these things. It's definitely been a challenge, and it's still a challenge to sort of just let it happen and let it all materialize. But I think it just keeps sort of like the universe or whoever's doing this, like however this all works out, just kind of keeps putting it back in my face with like, well, as soon as I relax on something and kind of let go, in your terminology, like don't control the how, and just kind of let things materialize, they pop up, and I see it much more clearly now. I mean, it's very easy to see this stuff as it just starts to lay out. And I'm slowly but surely letting go of that need to have this sort of structured and finite plan of how I'm going to get somewhere. That being said, though, I've kind of found a new way to think about planning in general, because I do think, at least for the way that my brain works, needing to have a detailed plan of action is still there. Mm-hmm. I like that as a tool, but there's something that, and if it's not obvious, I'm having a hard time putting words to it, but there's something about just trusting that it's going to work out and letting the plan sort of develop one step at a time. Yeah. And what I'm finding is that if you look back when it's all over and you look at the plan, so you wrote down every step as it came up, it looks like a pretty detailed plan. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I see how you got here. You made this plan and you followed it. But in reality, I think what's taking place is you're just sort of keeping track of the steps as they show up, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's this. So let's do this. It's this or this. Let's do this. And next thing you know, it looks like you've created this plan. So while it's still a great tool and it's a great thing to have around, what I'm finding is that the plan shows up, somewhere along the line, and the way that I'm doing things, just sort of from a business structure perspective, is much more about like milestones and benchmarks, that are somewhere along this winding road, as opposed to every step in between.
I love that. So I think what you're saying is it's a little bit spread out. Like you're not looking necessarily at that next number, or how do I hit maybe my next monthly goal, but you're seeing those milestones along the way, maybe a little further spread out, and the winds and all of that on the path.
Yeah. And specifically, I guess, so using the whatever number for like a quarterly number that you're looking to hit, instead of what I would do in the past would be like, okay, so to hit that number, then that means that this week I have to hit this, and next week I have to hit this, and the week after that I have to do this. And instead, what's materializing is that the goal is there, and this week I might hit 3 times what I needed to hit, and next week I get nothing at all. And then, and that it's not a problem for me anymore. Right. Like it used to be. It used to be like,
yay,
oh, too much work this week, no, what am I, and so I guess, I mean, it really, at the end of the day, it comes down to trust in the process, and that process is what I mean by process is the process of moving from A to B in whatever it is that you're doing, and that could look like a lot of different things. Fundamentally, just trusting that, as long as you keep taking the next step, you're going to get there.
I love it. That's awesome. Vanessa, do you have anything to add on to sort of that new way of business, or what it's like?
The only thing I would just add is, for listeners out there, because I know a lot of women are drawn to do this work. I think probably more so than men. Is that probably a fair statement, Cassie?
Yeah. I mean, definitely in my work, for sure.
Yeah. In your work. So I would just really encourage women to maybe share this podcast or share Adam's point of view, because I think it really makes a huge difference for men to get this thing, to get what Adam's talking about. And it gives such a nice context and sort of space for women and men to operate from, to create this abundance together. And I just think it's really cool. And I'm really proud of Adam, because I think it's easy just to, double down on your thought process and the way that you've had success in the past. And I really want to commend him for like doing this work and being open to like changing fundamentally the way he thinks about things in order to be available for something even greater. It's just so cool.
Oh, shucks.
It is so cool.
It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Because in the beginning, like I know the work works, right? But but you never know how much somebody's going to embrace it, or are they really going to, like, as you're doing it, like, how much are they really stepping into it? And I think for sure, like Adam, you showed up and you did the work, and it's so fun to hear you talk about it now, and to hear you put it in the perspective of like, okay, and this is how it fits into like the way I've always done things. Like I can look back and I can see that path, and yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point probably to hover on, is that I think, everything that we do is a tool in the toolbox, so to speak, and you just have to keep accumulating tools, and just know when what tool is right for what. And I mean, and that's I think exactly what it's come down to for me in the planning process for everything that we're doing, is that I have some tools that are really good for this aspect of it. And now from the work with you, I have this whole other set of tools that helps fill in the gaps and like relieves the pressure in a lot of ways of getting through it,
Yeah. How do you think that, and this is for both of you, that sort of relief of pressure and the seeing things more the same, like more the same path, how is that going to help you grow exponentially?
I think the biggest thing is that our life is so much lighter and more joyful and more fun now because of this, like Adam said, the relief of pressure. And, I think that a lot of us can create success in a lot of different ways. And so just being able to create it in this way, in this playful, fun, sweet, and just genuine way, just makes you want to do more of it. I think it gives us more sustainability in our business, because if you don't love what you're doing, or you're suffering, or it's a point of contention for you or your spouse or whatever it is, you're just not going to sink your heart and soul into it. You're not going to put the hours and the energy and the love into it. But when you have this sense of playfulness and lightness and freedom and a way to self-express within the process of your business, I just think it gives you such a greater potential for really creating whatever the hell you want, I think that for us, like, nothing is out of reach now. Even if we can't see exactly how it's going to happen, we're very clear that it's just all we have to decide is what it is we want to create. That's really the big decision. It's not about how we're going to get there or controlling all of that. It's just, what do we want to create? And I think that is so cool in terms of, your company being a place for total freedom of self-expression.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Wow, I want to work there.
Right?
That place sounds cool. Yeah, and I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it really is. There's a level of, or at least for me, there's a level of like looking at this like a game. I mean, and obviously it's kind of an important game, and it's more important to others. Probably, some people it might be incredibly important, and so they might take it a little bit more seriously. But I think the more that you can look at the whole picture like a game that you're playing, instead of a thing that has to be done, that it just becomes easier, and especially like one of the dynamics that Vanessa and I have is working together in business and in our personal relationship. There's a lot of things that can muddy the waters, when we're talking about business or when we're talking about personal stuff. And there's something about being able to have the lightness and playfulness around what it is that we're doing that enables us to brush off, kind of any number of things that might otherwise spin us out and create some sort of Cold War, at home. And it's just a much easier way of going about it, and I don't know if that's coming across, but there's a playfulness to the way that we move through our business dealings now that just enables the rest of our life to move much more smoothly, Don't take
awesome.
things seriously.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. So, speaking of the playfulness, Vanessa, I know you have a total.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So let's have fun with that.
So this is my total. It was $67,505, and Adam has some additional amount that is going to remain undetermined. But yeah, I was saying this before we went live, Cassie, is that I still keep track, even though we're quote unquote not doing the same coaching program or whatever. I'm still keeping track because I love this tool. I love the fact that there's a place on my phone where whenever something magical around money happens, I acknowledge it and I write it down, and it's there. It's like I'm noticing it and I'm honoring it and I'm celebrating it, because I think it's really cool to actually celebrate if it's $2 that I save on dog food, or if it's, a $2,000 sale. Like, it doesn't matter. I get excited because I know the magic of abundance is in each of those things.
Yes. I want to ask Adam about evidence in a minute, but so because we had a conversation in the beginning and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording about, you were like, what do I count? And so we would talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's such a powerful conversation, and what came out of it is such powerful growth. And it's this result of, like, on my phone, I see all of this abundance.
Yeah, actually, if I were to maybe summarize like the most important thing that happened for me during this coaching, it might be within the context of this particular thing, because when you own your own business, counting extra money, quote unquote, that comes in can be difficult, because you're like, well, is that sale really extra? Because obviously I have that thing on my website, it's available for sale. So like, that's not really extra if somebody buys it, or, so there were all these little ways that my mind was trying to rationalize why something wasn't extra. So I was almost trying to disprove the magic. Like, oh, well, that's not really magic, because of course that sale could happen, or of course this thing could happen. And so I was operating from this place of like, someone had to drop $1 million in my lap in order for me to notice that it was like, something special had happened. and I think that, the problem with that, it's not right or wrong, but for me, the problem with that was that I needed something so mind-blowing and huge. I couldn't have gratitude until something was like huge. And instead of celebrating every single little small win and every single little magical thing that was around every corner, I was looking at those and going, well, you're not that magical. That's not that cool. And so I just decided at some point, with obviously help from you and the coaching and the process, I just decided to inverse that method and just celebrate every single thing. If it felt even like slightly different than how I thought it would be, or even slightly of a surprise or whatever it was, I just started celebrating it all. And it just seemed like once I did that, there was just more and more to celebrate all the time, and more magic kept pouring in. And so I just really think that, what's the term? Like, whatever I don't know what the term is, but like what you focus on, you get more of. Yeah. And so like that story for me has really stuck. And now every little win I get, every little thing, even from just finding a dollar in my drawer, whatever it is, I'm like, woohoo, you would think I had that $1 million bag of money dropped in my lap, because I feel like that's the energy behind every single one of those moments.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yes.
And I'd like to point out all this abundance coming in with more joy, more fun, like lighter. And I think that was the key. And one of the things that I had said to you guys in the beginning is I didn't actually know, like during the first part, like, would we have a ton of more money that we could track come in? But I knew, and my intention for you is that the money can come in and it can be easier.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That was a huge part of it, is that getting rid of the story of that more money means more suffering, more work, more stress, more discomfort, all of those things that we had equated more money to, which was just a made up story. I mean, it was just inherited from a combination of poorly informed relatives that raised us. how it happens, right? We learn
Right.
people were raised by, and they do their very best, and they're trying to teach you the very best they know. But, you just get this sort of mishmash of fear and, nervousness and worry and all these things compiled into how you run your money story. And it just needed to be just disassembled.
Sure. Yeah.
Disassembled
works.
I was like,
Remember?
Yeah.
It needed to be undone.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. Adam, do you have anything to add to that about?
Just a story came to mind. So we were recently in Costa Rica and visited my dad who lives down there, and we were talking about, I don't even know what we were I think so, something about this and how we're doing our business and all this kind of stuff. And we were talking about how happy we are with our business. And my dad says something, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, yeah, this whole enjoying what you do thing is new, and he's like, if you think about like my dad and my grandparents, he's like, that just didn't even cross their mind. He's like, and it's not because they didn't like want it or whatever. He's like, but all the jobs then suck. He's like, there weren't good jobs. And you think about it, and it's like, no, it's probably really true. If you're dealing with people who are coming out of the Depression, or even just industrial America in the early years, the jobs were not like woohoo coal mine. You know what I mean? Like, nobody was super pumped on that. Like there was the people who could eke out some level of like, I don't know. There's probably, I'm sure people had pride in what they were doing, but like level of stoke, I've dreamed of this since I was a little kid kind of stuff, just didn't really exist. And now it does. So it's interesting to think about, for people who were raised by the generation of parents that we have, which are, what are they? Are they baby boomers?
Yeah.
The odds are you're getting some lingering leftover thought process and mindset from a time that is fundamentally different than now. And I think it's worth noting, there's nothing wrong with you if you have these beliefs. They're probably there for a good reason, and you can certainly go out and find all sorts of evidence as to why they're true, but it doesn't have to stay that way.
Exactly. So important. It doesn't have to stay that way. I love that. So speaking of evidence, so Adam didn't necessarily track the money, but he tracked tons of evidence. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and what that did for your mindset?
Yeah, totally. So and I don't know why, honestly, I don't know why the money thing I just didn't do it. Like I just didn't track it at all. But the evidence, on the other hand, was something that I picked up really quickly, and I think it was very helpful for me. And so what that really looked like was just, instead of, and I think for me it's probably even more important because I had a sort of cynical tendency around this sort of stuff where, just make up an example, but we'd get an unexpected order for a retreat, somebody that wasn't like in our warm market that had been, fundamentally selling to, and you're like, who is this person, that shows up at a spot in a retreat? And there'd be a tendency for me to go, oh, well, they must have heard us somewhere, or, just sort of write it off as sort of it doesn't mean anything. It's like, it doesn't mean you're successful at this just because somebody you've never heard of paid a whole bunch of money to come to one of your events, and so there was like this mindset around that I think looking for the evidence, looking for those sort of things as, wow, this is working, as opposed to don't make it mean anything, was a really big shift for me, and so I found it in every little thing. So like Vanessa had mentioned, you go with this place, we buy dog food, we're part of some kind of rewards program, and we don't really understand the rules, but sometimes they're like, sweet, you got a $16 credit. You're like, awesome,
Yes.
And so just that little shift, you're like, that's super cool. All right. Yeah, this is working, and every little thing like that, it was a lot easier for me to just make note of it mentally and then jot down some cryptic, something about it later. And I think that sort of repetitive use, because you can find 50 things a day that you can probably count as evidence, and so I think for me, what was super effective about it was that it just happened all the time. And so then it just shifted the way that I looked at this stuff, and it's kind of weird to think about. I haven't really talked about this at all, but like fundamentally that sort of cynical concept around it, like, doesn't even ring for me anymore. Like, just even giving you that example, I'm like, God, did I used to think about it that way? But it's really true, but it is true. Like, that was something that I would say, that was like
Yeah.
a story. Now, not so much.
I love that, because what I thought about when you shared that example was just recently, it wasn't just somebody came and like got a retreat, like they bought like 4 spots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like that you had no idea who they were, they weren't interacting with you on a continual basis.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Which I love.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is again, like, just, going back to like what the implications for your business are. It's like, it's magical. Like, now we have magic in our business where it's like these things can happen and we're like, holy cow, this is awesome. And obviously you're working super hard. We have a podcast and we're doing all the business things. It's not like it literally is, it is magic, but it's not like we don't know how it's happening. Right. But it's like, it's just so cool that you can be in the magic of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that. So, and that kind of brings us, so part of all this, and when we started working together, it was like, we really want business coaching and the step-by-step. And I said, okay, before that, we have to lay this foundation before we can do any of that. And otherwise we're, I don't know what we're creating, right? We're sort of just kind of, we just be like stacking some things on top of each other. Right. Mm-hmm. And what I love about you guys, and I'm excited to share, is that what happened was that you opened up and you found the perfect business coach for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think, it really was. I think that like what you're saying is that, we couldn't have just painted over like cracked paint or whatever. Like you have to like sand the wall, prime the wall, like get everything back to sort of this malleable place where, and that's really what our work with you was like actually bringing us to a place where someone could even work with us, because someone could have come in and just been working with our old stories, our old thought processes, our, dismissiveness or negativity or whatever was there. And we could have created from that place, but it would not have been as powerful, wouldn't have been as activated. And it would have been from a place of a lot more fear. And I think that just moving into this place where we're really activated and really feeling grounded and powerful and magnetic in our money story brought more and more abundance. And this coaching from someone who actually runs retreats, which is what we do and what we're out to really keep expanding on, just landed in our lap. And so I think it's just one of those things where the attraction, again, once you're available for that vibration, then you can start attracting that. And so, we hadn't attracted it yet because we weren't there. We weren't a viable attraction for that kind of energy. And so now we are. And that, this is one scenario for it, but like it's happening in so many other places that it's just undeniable that it's so important to do this preliminary work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can say, like, from my part, there's, so when you're looking at balance sheets and P&Ls and all of this kind of stuff in your business, and probably one of the most like fear-based graphs out there is your churn rate, and you look at these things, and if you don't have the foundation to be able to not just get stuck in the cynicism, and this is talking specifically for me, it would be very, very easy, would have been and was very easy to get into those sheets and look at all of the reasons why things aren't working, instead of being able to go into those sheets and see, you still see what needs to be polished up and what needs, the areas that need work or that need to get cut off or whatever. But the mindset around it and that lack of cynicism around it is critical for objectively looking at the raw data that you have about your business. And I think for me, that's probably like the number one thing, from like, just aside from, there's so many benefits to just my personal life, but just from like the managing and running your own business perspective, if you can't look at this data objectively, you might really be setting yourself up for a lot of misery and hair pulling and gray hair and just like stress around something that, the numbers are the numbers, but if you can look at them from this other perspective, it's going to be a lot more fun, and you won't, I would assume that you're not nearly as prone to burnout and fatigue and just kind of giving up, and there's, we just went and watched a movie, the Think and Grow Rich movie last night at a premiere. And one of the stories, I read that book a long time ago, but one of the stories that came out that I really remembered was the story about the guy that was the gold miner, and he stopped like 3 feet from gold, right? He dug and dug and dug and dug and dug and dug and finally gave up, and then the boss sold everything, and the guy came in and dug 3 more feet and struck gold. And I think that is a real tendency if your mind is sort of stuck in a place of cynicism, or a place of what's the opposite of abundance?
Lack.
What do you call it? The lack. Yeah, but the scarcity. When you're talking about mindsets, right? In a scarcity mindset, when you're looking at like, oh my God, everything we have is almost gone, and according to these numbers, next month it's going to be gone. There's a real tendency to stop, or to retreat or to pull back on something. And I think if you can shift that mindset around and look at the things that are going right and adjust and it's like, okay, yeah, this is a little weird, but over here everything's great. Going, you're 3 feet from gold.
Yeah. I love that. It's so true, because there is, and I think even from a business perspective, generally, sort of like those old stories, like the misinformed stories from your ancestors, a lot of times you're taught to look at those business numbers and go fix things instead of look at like, this is working. How do we amplify that?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that, we just, maybe I completely forgot my, lost it. I was like, I had something super profound to say, and it totally left my brain.
I love it. Well, I'm sure it'll come back.
It will, for sure.
Yeah. So while it's coming back, I will say I'm super excited for you guys, because I do agree with everything you said, Vanessa. Like, you are ready. You're at this attraction point to go take this, go do what's the next step, and make your business bigger and even more joyful and more fun and touch more people's lives, which is super exciting, because I know the work you guys do in the world, and that's awesome. So tell everybody how they can connect with you all if they want more of your goodness and want to continue to see your journey.
Yeah, so Be the Wellness is our website, and Be spelled like a honeybee, so it's BEE, the Wellness. And we have our podcast, which is also Be the Wellness, wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can visit our website, and we have all of the shows linked there. And Cassie's actually been on the show twice, so you can check out her episodes. And Instagram is probably our most, where we're most prolific about creating content.
It's the prettiest place to see what we've got going on.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, definitely. And, it's cool because especially we do a lot of events and retreats. So you can kind of get a feel for the vibe of the retreats and some of the places we go to, and just sort of just the general overall energy of what we're creating. And we have, programs and offerings and strength and conditioning, meditation, nutrition, sort of a holistic approach to your health and well-being. And that's all on BeTheWellness.com, so you can check that out. But I did remember what I was going to say earlier.
Yay!
And that is, and I think this is kind of a good closing as well, is, the difference I think overall for us in everything that happens now is whether something that happens is quote unquote good or bad, we see it as good. And I think that that's the biggest difference for us, is that even if something that comes at us like, oh, this was unexpected, it's an unexpected bill, or it's an unexpected, cancellation, or it's a whatever unexpected something, we just have this feeling of like, why is this happening for us instead of why is this happening to us? And I think that's the biggest difference for us, is that we've kind of gotten rid of bad things happening. And, it doesn't mean that they won't be challenging or there won't be difficult, negotiations or things that have to be done around those things, but we just don't see it as a negative anymore. And I think that that's the biggest turning point for us personally and for the fate of our company.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know, that's huge. That changes everything, right?
It changes everything. It really does.
Yeah, I love that. Any final thoughts, wrap up from you, Adam?
I think, to kind of tap into what Vanessa was saying earlier when she was saying how cool I am.
Let's bring it back to that.
Let's just hover on that for a minute. That was, if you don't mind. But really, I would just encourage men, if there are any listening, and for people who who might have a man in their life who would be interested to listen, that it really is very important. It's important work on so many aspects of what you've got going on, and I think that the changes, we see this a lot in our coaching, that people will come to us for something. They come to us, they're like, I need to lose 20 pounds because I'm going to go to Hawaii or whatever. But what they find over the course of the coaching is that what they really got out of it is like, yes, they met that goal. Very likely that they met that goal, but along the way they discovered some things about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and those things are going to change the way that they do their life forever. And I would say it's the exact same thing with your coaching. And so we came in with a very specific goal and idea. And as you kind of alluded to earlier, the questions that we had aren't really even questions anymore. You know what I mean? Like, we've moved through this in a way that now our outlook and the way that we sort of move through life is just such that the things we thought were important that we needed to know, we don't, and so you never know what it is that you're going to get from something like this, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So if you're like, oh, my money story's solid, I've, this and that and everything's squared away and I'm all good. You're like, well, maybe there's something else you might uncover, and maybe you could be that much better. Or like you said, maybe it could be that much easier. So I would just say, do it, I guess, in short.
I love that.
Yeah. And one other thing, Cassie, if you don't mind. No, one more thing.
Of course. No, I love it.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge what an incredible coach you are. And I think that, Adam and I consider ourselves to be high-level coaches. And by that, I mean, we scrutinize people's process. Like, we're very, very leery of people's process and how they coach. And both of us are profoundly impressed with who you are as a person, how you coach, and the process you take people through. And I hope that comes as a weighted review, because we really don't give that out to everyone. We really are very particular about, who we would endorse or who we would just, unabashedly refer people to or what have you. And you honestly are an incredible coach who has the ability to very distinctly pull out what's there for people and help them work through it. And it is a beautiful gift that you're sharing. And we're just so grateful for you and so grateful for the contribution you've made to us and that you're making to people's lives.
Thank you for sharing that.
Adam, would you like to add to that? Don't worry, Cassie, I got you.
No, I mean, it's really true. And it's a unique gift, to be able to do this. And we talk about it all the time in the group calls, and just watching you when people present their problems and they come up with this and they come up with that, and you just pick through it individually, and it's like, after you watch for a little while, like, it's always the person asking the question who gets it last. You know what I mean? Like, everybody else is like, oh, I know where she's going with this, but you nail it. You do a very, very, very good job, and we're very thankful to have been a part of it.
Awesome. Oh, thank you for sharing that, like, both of those. And I know that because you guys are amazing, and the work you do in the world is so transformative. And so that is a huge, huge compliment that I'm going to receive. So thank you very much. Thank you for letting me be part of your journey. We do have one more interview coming up where Adam and Vanessa get to ask me all the questions, which I'm excited about, because you've interviewed me before, and this is like after you've gone through the program. So it's going to be even more fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we're really excited to turn the table.
Yes.
Exactly. That'll be great.
I love it. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out Adam and Vanessa at Be the Wellness, BEEthewellness.com, because they've got some really cool stuff going on. If you've ever wanted a trip of a lifetime, like go there, go to their website and pick it out and decide to do it, because it's awesome.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Cassie. We appreciate it.
Thank you both. And we will talk to you soon. Of course, we will follow up and see what's happening in the new year. And of course, we have one more interview. So thank you guys.
Thank you for joining us on The More Money Show. To learn more about enrolling in the Enchanted Circle, go to cassieparks.com.